How's it going, everybody? It's great to be back, and hopefully you're ready to encourage somebody. I'm encouraged. Uh, Recently I was able to do many different talks and conferences across the country, and that's what I do every day, going out, bringing a message. But then you get to come here to be encouraged, where we can help you grow in 6 areas in your life. One area you might need to grow in is your mental strength. Maybe you need to grow in your career, your finances, your spiritual strength. Maybe you need to grow in your family life. But guess what? We're here to encourage you to grow in each area of your life so you can design a plan for it. And encouragement is important. And one way to stay encouraged is through trust. That's one way to stay encouraged. How we stay encouraged is to trust others, to trust people, and to build up that trust. And I can tell you that we have a guest on here today, and he runs a company called Trust Unlimited. And his goal is to help you to build trust with many people. And he's going to share about that. He actually is one of the world's leading experts on the topic of trust. He wrote his doctoral thesis on building trust in hostile environments. He did that at Duke. And he has deep theoretical knowledge and practical applied experience on this virtue of trust. He's devoted his career to helping individuals and organizations better understand on how to actually trust and grow in stronger relationships. I hope that you'll encourage Darryl Stickel, and you'll be able to encourage him today. So I'm going to bring him on. Darryl, how's it going, man?
Hey.
Trust is a tough thing, man.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. And we're seeing the lowest levels we've ever seen. So,
yeah, why do you think that is? Why do we have the lowest levels of trust?
Well, for me, trust is a combination of uncertainty and vulnerability. And they multiply together. So if we've got really high levels of uncertainty, we can't tolerate a lot of vulnerability. And over the last few decades, we've seen just real growth in uncertainty, right? We're seeing social change and environmental challenges, and we're seeing a lot of problems, big, hairy problems that require us to work together to actually solve them. And we have just so much turmoil and conflict. Makes it harder for us to trust.
Yeah, what's the turmoil that you see that you said specifically you're talking about, like people are insecure and unstable. What do you think are the key elements of the instability of our culture right now?
Well, I think we're still trying to catch up with technology, and social media has created an environment where our relationships tend to be a mile wide and an inch deep. And so something new comes along, we jump on it, we see sort of changes in values and norms, but not all in the same direction. We have the potential for the mouse to roar, right? So for a really small segment of the population to get really loud, and it sends us signals that things may be worse than they actually are. And so for me, we have these traditional approaches, the things we've always sort of relied on to build trust within communities. And those communities are so much more transient than they used to be, And
they're moving, like I tell my dad, he goes, "Are the problems worse?" I said, "No, the problems aren't worse. They're just faster."
Yeah, exactly. Right, brother? And so, we see this challenge for leaders where the definition of what makes a great leader is a moving target. We see this challenge for parents and partners where things are moving really fast and we struggle to adapt. We struggle to catch up. And, I love the work that you're doing around encouragement, because whenever we talk about change, it creates a bump, right? It creates a hike in uncertainty. And it means we have to do things differently than we used to do them. And I don't know about you, brother, but every time I try something new, I'm not great at it. I have to learn, right? And so we need someone to come alongside and say, "You're doing the right things.
Yeah,
it's going to be all right."
We need people to hold us accountable. We need people to see goodness in us, and hold us accountable to that goodness that they see in us. Because I think all people are made good, right there. All people are made uh, with dignity and respect, and I think with so many hostile people, and I agree with you, these little mice running around, really loud mice, hostile with their message, it
Hmm.
creates this uncertainty that, like, Darryl, maybe you believe 10 things different than I believe. Oh, I can't be your friend now. What do you think about? I mean, that's one
Yeah.
of my biggest challenges, that I go through. All of a sudden, like, Darryl believes something different from me. All of a sudden, I can't be your friend. I can't be in your life. That is just insane, don't you think?
Well, and it's gotten more pervasive. And I talk about, because I've done parenting workshops and those kinds of things as well, right? Where trying to create deeper relationships with your kids. I talk about having a relentlessly positive story about my kids, giving them the benefit of the doubt, and waiting to hear their side of the story before I make judgment, getting
I love that.
curious, right? And we could have a whole lot more of that for one another, where we want to understand each other better. Right now, you're right. We hear people say, one thing, and then we're like, oh, I can't hang with that person. Um, you and I may have different opinions on a whole range of things,
Of
but that's an
course.
opportunity for us to learn from each other and to get
Yeah.
curious about each other, right?
Yeah, that's where society grows, in that uncomfortable experience that you don't understand somebody. And that's where trust grows, that you learn and you can understand that person, and you can, really have a sensitivity to their sufferings, a sensitivity to their surroundings, a sensitivity to their temperament or their behavioral challenges, no matter what age they are. Because I've realized that adults have more behavioral challenges than kids in a lot of ways. Kids are actually more stable than adults. Have you seen that, Daryl?
Well, I agree, brother, because kids actually have some kind of framework, right? They have some kind of structure around their behavior. And we're thinking about, when I think about my kids, I think about today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 10 years down the road. Um, I don't do that for myself, right? I don't have that same kind of discipline where I'm thinking about investing good behaviors now and it'll pay off for you in 10 years, right?
Well, yeah, that's what we're hoping for everybody who's listening, that they're going to start building that up no matter what age they are, that they're going to design a plan for their life in these 6 areas that we mention all the time. And I think trust, though, has a big part in the experience of human growth as a person, to be your very best. It's very difficult when you've been let down. I'm in people might not know this, but I'm in a small town, Syracuse, New York, um, that is, it's a town that's been beat up. You know what I mean? So
Right.
if you have 7 ideas and only one of those 7 ideas has ever worked for you, or you have 100 ideas and only one of those has ever worked, all of a sudden, that's kind of how you view your relationships. So there is, especially in our town, a great lack of trust
Hmm.
in the climate and the culture, because there isn't an entrepreneurial or a vision oriented experience here, because they've been let down so much over the past 30 to 50 years. So now
Yeah.
transform that into a kid who, you're a kid that's been let down a lot, or maybe you're an adult who's been let down. So picture you got this person or this culture or this. So how do you get your trust in human beings, your trust in yourself, your trust in the future? How do you get that back, Darryl? Come on, help us out here.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing is that we have trust all the time. Um, and one of the sort of bugaboos I have, one of the pet peeves I have, is a lot of the research and people in general think about trust as either being present or absent, right? Like an old time light switch. It's either on or it's off. And as soon as I say this, you're going to go, well, duh. But
Yeah,
but we trust some people more than others,
of course. Yeah.
right? So it's a continuous variable. It's like a dimmer switch. And so, we see trust in society. We go to restaurants, we get in a cab, we get on an airplane, we go
Uber,
see a doctor,
Uber.
you
We
know?
get we get driven around by strangers.
Exactly, right? Or we cross the street when the light's green. Um, and so trust is what allows societies to function. The problem is that we're not creating these deeper relationships.
Why not?
And
Why can't people help me out there? Why can't people do that? People need encouragement, and I believe this is so important.
yeah, well, so I get the frustration because I have it too. Um, People are talking about trust all the time, but they're not talking about what to do about it. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years is giving people a systematic approach to understanding here's what trust is, here's how it works, here's how we build it. And so I think there are 10 levers that we can pull. And they come from, four of them come from uncertainty. Because I said before, it's uncertainty times vulnerability equals risk.
Okay.
Well, deep relationships have a really small range of uncertainty so that we can experience a great deal of vulnerability, right?
Yeah, I love that.
And that's where our head tends to go. And so if it's uncertainty times vulnerability equals risk, then we need to understand where does uncertainty come from and how do we take steps to reduce it? And where does vulnerability come from and how do I take steps to help you manage that? And so if I'm trying to convince you to trust me, I need to understand where uncertainty comes from. And partly it comes from me, and partly it comes from the context that we're embedded in, the rules of the game, right? And so you talk about Syracuse, it's been hit hard economically, there's not a lot of development going on. That's a shared context, right? Now, we can take steps to try to change that together. And that's, trying to get the government or the city to change the way that it invests its resources, start to create groups that are more forward thinking so we can try to maneuver the context. What we have the most control over in the short term, though, is our own behavior. And the three levers that each of us has that we can use are benevolence, integrity, and ability. And benevolence is that belief you've got my best interest at heart. You've got my back. And integrity is, do I actually follow through on my commitments, my promises, and do my actions line up with my values? And then ability is, do I have the competence to do what I say I'm going to do? And so when I work with clients, whether it's parents or leaders or organizations or the Canadian military trying to figure out how to rebuild trust with the locals in Afghanistan, I start by saying, how would we show benevolence, right? How would we show integrity? What are our values? Have we communicated those? What are the promises that we're making? Both explicit and implicit. And what does excellence look like for the other party? I'll be working with a group of leaders and I'll say, who here is an excellent leader? All the hands go up and I'll say, that's fantastic. What does that mean? And they'll just look at me.
I
Right?
don't know if I can put my hand up for that. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm hoping to be excellent.
So if you want to be excellent, then you need to understand who your stakeholders are. Right? And it's your listeners, it's your colleagues. It's, if we wanted to do an excellent podcast together, which you and I aspire to do, then we would have a conversation with each other, and we did, right? What would good look like for you? And then we'd ask your listeners, what do you find compelling? What do you want to get from this podcast? What does excellence look like? And we'd ask other stakeholders that you have, people that are working with you. And so we'd start to have that conversation. I have that conversation with my sons, right? Which is terrifying. Saying, what's a good dad look like? How can I be the best dad I can be? Because you're worried that they're going to say, not you, brother.
Yeah, for sure.
But they come back with feedback around, here's the things you do I really appreciate. And, when we run into trouble, this is what happens. And here's how you handle it. And, I appreciate this. I struggle with this. And so we start to learn what excellence is. And a lot of times, we all have the ability to build trust. Some are just better than others. Those who aren't very good have a lever that they pull. It's usually the ability lever, right? I have this much experience, these kinds of credentials. I'm 9 out of 10 dentists agree that I'm a good guy or whatever it is. Those who are better at building trust have multiple levers. Those who are really good have multiple levers and they know when to pull which one.
Yeah, because the young people don't care about the ability level. Would you agree with that as much as the other levers? Young people who I deal with a lot, they want to know that the integrity is there, that you want what's best for them,
Yeah.
that you're listening to them, that you're asking them questions. Have you found that out in your research?
Yeah. And the struggle that I often see is when we're talking about benevolence, we're talking about having someone's back, having their best interest at heart. We actually need to include them in the conversation.
For sure. Yeah.
A
What are
lot of
your
times we
dreams? What are
assume.
your dreams? What are your desires? What are your hopes? What are your fears? How can I walk with you in that?
And the challenge that we have, if it's our own kids, is we're thinking about the future, we're thinking about years down the road, and they're thinking about right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so we have to help them be successful now to earn the right to talk about the future.
I like that. I think that's beautiful.
And so, with my kids, when my oldest was 12, they're 22 and 19 now. When my oldest was 12, he looked at me one day and he said, "Dad, I know you're always about what's best for me, even when you're upset with me." And I got to tell you, man, if somebody's got that story of you, you get all kinds of grace, right?
For
You can
sure.
make all kinds of mistakes. They have the positive story about you, which allows you to try to be the best you can be. But you actually have to include them in that conversation to find out what success looks like for them. And then, what I do is I will take people I'm coaching or students in my courses, and I'll say, "You're going to have the following conversation with someone. You're going to say, I heard this guy, Darryl, he was talking about benevolence. And that just basically means having somebody's back, right? Trying to do what's best for them." And I think I do that, but it doesn't always seem to land that way. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, all the time. I think that's the story of everybody's life.
Right. And so then we narrow the funnel a bit. And I say, you know, has someone ever really had your back? What did they do? What did that look like? How did it feel? Now we're starting to get a sense from them of what good looks like, what benevolence looks like, right? And we're priming them for this conversation. Then we narrow the funnel further and we say, what is success for you? How do I help you get there? What would it look like if I was benevolent to you? Now they've given us hints, right? They've given us a roadmap. And so that later on, when we're doing something, we can say, you remember when you told me this is what success looked like for you? This is me trying to help you get there. And so we remove all doubt. And we're intentional about trying to pull that lever, that benevolence lever. And we can do the same thing with integrity. We can do
So
the same thing with
what do you do,
ability.
Darryl, if like you ask that question? Because I know a lot of parents go through this if they're trying to help their families to become great, that
Yeah,
their kind of like goal or their desire doesn't match up with um, maybe what your belief system is. Like how do you handle that? How do you walk with somebody through that and keep the trust there so the communication doesn't die? Because I think a lot of people like they get on these different paths with their kids and they lose trust even though they didn't have to lose trust, though they differed with one another. So
right.
how do you do that with your kids when they're like, wait a second here, this is your goal? Holy cow, you're all about money. Or maybe your goal's like, oh, your goal is to use people like for your own benefit, whatever, using those two extremes. You know,
Right.
what do you do with your kid or the person you're walking with?
So if my kid said something like that to me, I'd say, wow, okay, I'm going to struggle with that for a bit. But that's about me. It's not about you. And here's the concerns I have. The long-term impact that has on you and on your soul. Because I've seen other people get overly focused on money and they tend to miss out on some of the other things in life. or, you know, we can have conversations about this. I'm not going to lose my shit. Because what they need to know is that they can come to me with anything. I'd much rather they be talking to me than one of their buddies
For sure.
who doesn't know shit about what's going on.
Yeah, but you know this, Darryl. Most of the time, they're going to their buddies for a lot of these parents. So what I always share with our listeners is like, look, if you don't have a personal mission statement and a family mission statement, your business mission statement is null and void in my perception. You're not going to be encouraged. You're going to be discouraged because your kids are going to see that your value system for your family and your value system for yourself personally is worth, your business is worth more than your family and yourself. So,
Right.
so what's very important is every kid who you're working with, one of your kids, especially, that they do have a mission, a personal mission statement, and they do understand what your family mission statement is. And I don't know if you believe this helps with trust. Something I've done is I ask my kids, "Hey, is this a part of our family mission?" You know, and they never go. And I really haven't had this happen yet. They never go and break this down of trust, why this works, because I'm interested in your understanding of it.
Right.
They've never said this to me. Dad, well, that's not my mission. Why do you think that is? I mean, and my kids are 18, 16, so they're similar to yours, like in that range.
Right.
12, 10, and the 6-year-old probably wouldn't have much to say about that, but but everybody else might. Why is that?
Because we're setting the context, right? We're setting the context of the formal and informal mechanisms of social control.
Okay.
Right. And so we're creating a set of rules that we've agreed to live by. And I'm guessing that your kids have had some level of input into the family mission, right? And they've,
Of course, yeah. My one son changed it. It used to be, so our mission is to be grateful, to love Jesus first and others no matter what, right? It used to be great, like to be excellent. But he goes, "What's better, Dad? Being grateful or being great?" And what was I going to say? Like,
right.
what? Oh, I want you to be great, but you're an a-hole. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've met a lot of great a-holes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to spend too much time with them, but
exactly.
I met a lot of grateful people that weren't successful in the world's eyes, but I'd love to hang out with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you've created this sort of shared understanding of what the family's rules and regulations are, what the context is for your family.
Is that important? Because I don't know if you ever heard about it. We homeschool our kids. There's this group out there, Darryl, called the non-schoolers. You ever hear of these?
No.
Yeah. They basically, like, it's a group of people that say, look, they're going to figure life out on their own. So if they're going to go eat a leaf, I'm not going to tell them it's wrong or right. They're just not going to like to eat a leaf. If they're going to read a book, they're going to pick up a book and just start reading it. And I swear, it's not a monster group, but it's one of these mousy groups that's loud
Right.
sometimes. But people don't believe having rules, regulations, and accountability. They kind of like, hey, whatever is good for you, son, that's good for you. Do you find that? Does that work with trust? I don't know.
Well, so here's the thing: is that means that if we follow that approach, everyone has to relearn everything, right? And so we don't get the benefit of understanding all the failures that others have made along the way. We need people to be able to learn and adapt and grow from the knowledge that we've already got in place. And it also means that, when people go to school or when they join social groups, they start to take on those rules, right? So if we belong to a social group, it has rules, both formal and informal. And if we don't have some semblance of that, then we don't know the rules that other people are playing by. And the more explicit we can make those rules, the easier it is for us to understand
So you
each
say
other.
that the more the rules are like specifically shared, the more trust will be built. Is that what your understanding is? How's it going? It's Justin Fatica, and I can tell you I'm so thankful for your encouraging messages and engagement and joining us for our videos that we hope are bringing you encouragement when you need it most. Now, before you go, I want to tell you about some exciting news. Since I was 19 years old, it's my dream to build facilities for kids. Well, that dream is happening. It's a place where young people and their families can relax, socialize, work out, be encouraged, that they can make a difference in somebody's life every day or have their lives be impacted. That's where we need you. We need you to ask yourself if you'd like to help us to break ground. You can be a part of this mission within less than 1 year. But if we don't have help, we can't do this. Now, I know right now there are a lot of people struggling, but we're just looking for pocket change, a rainy day fund, or to connect us with partners who can help make this dream a reality. We want every single kid and every single family to know they're amazing. And it starts with you. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content so we can keep you updated, so you can keep us going. And together, remember, we are making a lasting impact. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your support. And stay encouraged. And never forget, you were made for an amazing day. And it starts with what lives within you. You're amazing.
It reduces uncertainty, right? And one of the things we take for granted in North America, when I was helping the Canadian military in Afghanistan, we take for granted a lot of these formal rules, right? That there is government and there are laws and there are groups of people,
What,
police
Canada's
officers.
letting everybody do everything over there?
No. Afghanistan is.
Oh,
Afghanistan is.
All right, I'm just checking out. You never know what Canada's doing up there. You gotta, I don't go up there as often as other places.
We're just hanging out. But in Afghanistan, there was no central government that was imposing rules and regulations. It was all local stuff. And, our troops struggled with that because it was like, hey, I'm making a commitment to you. This is my job. This is and they were sort of like, yeah, right. And for them, it was really all the informal things like what religion you belong to, what village you were from, who you were related to, those things. And so when it comes to context, we can actually really make it clear for folks, hey, I have to pay rent. To pay rent, I have to work. This is the work that I do. And so these are the things that I'm constrained by.
Do you see an instability in America and Canada in some ways because of the less rules there are now, that they're kind of lightening it up, or no? Or do you think...
Well, I think it's always a balance between formal and informal.
Okay.
Right? So formal mechanisms of social control are like laws and rules and regulations.
Yep.
And those tend to be reactive and they tend to be powerful. Informal mechanisms are more fluid and can be proactive, right? So if we have a shared understanding of how we want to treat one another, right? Like I hear your podcast, I hear that you're about what's best for people, the rules of your family tell me something about you. All of these things give me a sense of who you are, right? That you and I could hang and it would be totally fine. So I think there's a balancing act that takes place. And
yeah, but Darryl, but for me, I've noticed, because I would be nervous, because the podcast I do is unique because I have every type of group on here. I have atheist, agnostic, Hindu, Jew, Muslim, Christian, Catholics, whoever, and then I have business, I have entrepreneurial, I have structured business, I have religious leaders, non-religious leaders, government leaders. So I really do that on purpose because I want us to come together. But what I've noticed is the nervousness I have, and it's not nervousness like I don't trust people. It's more nervousness that I don't know how somebody would take it. Like I shared my mission statement, right? to be grateful, to love Jesus. Once I say to love Jesus first, all of a sudden, like antennas like go up in our culture, right? Now I'm not
Yeah.
telling you you got to surrender to Jesus today. Though I might think that might be a good idea, but like, right? But that's not what so why do you think that's happening in our society right now? That all of a sudden when someone says there's something, that people lose trust in that person, and then they start to like, I see that in society. If somebody says, my belief is, just in humanity, and I have no religious affiliation, all of a sudden, like, there's 50% of the people who are like, I don't want to talk to that person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
I absolutely know I was interviewing someone for my podcast, The Imperfect Cafe, and it was a pastor for a big church, and I said to him, I said, I'm nervous, and he said, why are you nervous? And I said, because there are different rules for different religions, and I'm not informed enough to know that I'm not stepping on a landmine, and I really don't want to offend you.
okay. Yeah, but I like what you said, Darryl. Like, you were more about him than you.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that when I say, why do you think our mission statement is love no matter what? I want to die for someone who believes different than me just as much as I want to die for somebody who believes in everything I believe in. That's my goal. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, that's like that's why I hope somebody says, you're an a-hole, so I could go, you're amazing. I love you.
Well, and that sort of inclusiveness isn't constant across all these different religious spectrums, right? So some of them are exclusive, and they sort of band together and exclude everyone else, right? And vilify those who don't believe in the way that they believe. Those who are inclusive, which is more my approach, right? Is, hey, we appreciate everyone. God appreciates everyone. And our beliefs are more about loving one another and accepting that we all have failings,
Yeah.
and
So
that that's who we are.
how do we get beyond that? Like, especially like, because even the word inclusive, I'm not trying to judge the word, but the word is even like a landmine.
It is, right?
Like, if you say inclusive, all of a sudden, I'm just telling you, you just shut out 75% of the people that probably are listening to this right now.
Right. And they think I
I'm
mean
just
it.
being authentic with you just because I know what is going on in our country.
Yeah. And they think I mean it in sort of an extremist way.
Yeah.
And I often get frustrated, you know, with that, and with, the term be authentic, because people who use that phrase often mean accept me being authentic. I don't really want to accept you for who you are, but I really expect you to accept me for who I am.
Yes. Yep. And
And
authenticity sometimes doesn't deem, I look at authenticity, when I hear the word authenticity, I have the definition that I'm caring about you with what I'm saying.
right.
Right? That I'm being sensitive to your sufferings, not like null and void of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I need to go, oh man, this person could be going through something. I need to care for them. I need to be willing to put my sword aside, because my sword could destroy this person. I
Right.
I want to love them up. I want to care for them. I want to welcome them. How can we? It is very challenging, Darryl, to build trust in society in this way right now.
It really is, because people assume that you're up to something.
Yes. Like what I just told you, like, hey, it'd be great if you gave your life to Jesus, whether you do or not. I'm not even asking you. But for this podcast, other podcasts, I might ask somebody, but I don't know
Right.
you. I don't know you in that way, so that's not my choice to ask you today. But my point is that how are we able, from your studies at Duke, from your understanding of trust with hostile environments? So I think what I'm hearing you say is, look, you got to want what's best for that person,
You do.
sincerely.
Yeah. Yeah. And we need to communicate it effectively to each other. Right. So when I talk about pulling these levers, I talk about showing someone that you care about them and their best interest, showing them that, hey, these are my values, this is how I'm going to be consistent with those, so it makes it easier to predict my behavior. Getting a shared understanding of what excellence is, having a shared understanding of what the context is, right? Like, what are the rules that I'm playing by? And then me understanding how they're vulnerable and working through that with them. And we have different perceptions of vulnerability, right? When I was a doctoral student, $20 was a big deal. And as you get, full-time employment and you move on in your life and you start to develop resources, $20 becomes less and less of a big deal. And so it really depends on scarcity. And if I'm able to talk to you about challenges you're going to face and understand what you think is at stake and how you value it, then I can take steps to help you be more comfortable, feel safer, right? If you're worried about losing your job, I'm able to say, hey, you're really in demand, and here's 6 other places that would hire you in a heartbeat. You become a little less anxious, right? You feel a little less vulnerable. So we go through those sort of, that's 6 of the levers: 4 in uncertainty, 2 in vulnerability. There's 2 in perceived outcomes, which is, we interpret the world through stories. You and I could have the same experience, but have a different story about what happened, a different perception of whether it was a good outcome or a bad one. And that feeds back into our next exchange. In the middle of all this is our emotional states, whether we like or dislike someone else, if we're happy or sad or angry. Those all have an impact on how we evaluate somebody else. And the research that I did, the work that I did, just about all of the trust research is focused just on uncertainty and just on the individual within uncertainty. And so we're often in difficult times trying to pull these cognitive rational levers when people are really hijacked by their emotions. And that research treats people like they're rational actors. And I don't know if you've met people before, but we're not always rational.
Well, I am all the time there, Darryl.
Oh, of course you are.
I'm joking. No, yeah, no, I'd agree with that. It's and that's why, like, I use that word sensitivity a lot.
Right.
Because I think to build trust, that's the key virtue you have to grow in.
Yeah, you have to have empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to see somebody, like people say, well, this person doesn't believe that. Okay, well, the next question is, well, they're stupid. Well, I think they're stupid. What do you think? No, that's not no, it's like, well, why do you think they might not believe that?
Right.
Hey, like, I'd like to understand that. Or why don't that? I'm interested. And I like what you said. I use a principle called don't judge, be curious, right?
Right.
You shared that. And that's how you build trust, and you be able to challenge your emotions. Is this emotional? Is this an anxious situation that I'm in, or is this a trustworthy situation? So what are some things somebody could do in practical terms, Darryl, to help build up trust?
So I usually start, because we're wired to respond the way others have treated us. In the work that I do, we talk about lead with your imperfections. So acknowledge that you're not perfect and that you've made mistakes in the past. Be a little bit vulnerable to someone else, which shows them that it's okay to be vulnerable to you. And
so that's how you build up trust with others. This is a question I have. Does it build up trust to be vulnerable yourself with someone?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of people listening say, no, when I did that, it messed my relationship with someone up because I was being vulnerable.
Well, it's a dance that we do, right? So we start with just a little bit of vulnerability to see how that lands. If we go too big too fast, it scares people off
Yeah,
because they
so
feel like I can't respond that way.
trust is like your chicken, marinating your chicken. You want to, it starts off like, all right, if you leave it there for 10 minutes, all right, that's not going to work too well, but you need to little by little be
Yeah,
marinating the trust elements through your authenticity.
right. And we start asking questions about the other person. We show interest in the other person. So, why are you here? What does success look like for you? How do I help you get there? And it's the same with a job interview or trying to get promoted or trying to get stronger relationships with your kids. It's about trying to first seek to understand, then be understood, right?
Yep.
And I think that was Covey that coined that phrase.
Well, it was in the Psalms, but Covey took it. But
Okay.
but yeah, but no, but for sure, like what I agree with you saying, like it's invitation questions. How can you invite somebody to be a part of your life? How can you share something in your life and give them an opportunity to share about their life? It's
Right.
like C.S. Lewis says, friendship is born when you say you too, you've been through that too.
And a lot of times when we ask for help, it gives people the opportunity to ask us for help in return.
For sure.
So, I'm blessed to wander the world with my guide dog, Drake. I'm legally blind, and so I've got a seeing eye dog, and we wander the world, and we need help fairly often. And Drake is so friendly, and he just exudes this joy.
Well, you know why? Because a dog is spelled backwards.
God,
Yeah, because he's man's best friend, and he shows unconditional love.
yeah. And
Dogs
I
are the
think if
best.
if we all had Drake's brain chemistry, the world would be a much happier place.
Because he's totally like he gives of himself totally, probably.
He does, and he wants to be friends with everyone we run into. He wants to say hi to everybody. Um,
He's like a kid. He doesn't judge them before he meets them, or he doesn't judge by how they look. He just cares about them.
yeah, yeah. I had a situation in the Denver airport where I was waiting for a flight, and this huge black guy comes up and says, "Can I just say hi to your dog?" And we're just sitting there, right? Drake's not working. He's just sitting there with me, hanging out. I said, "Yeah, of course." So he sits down, and we have this fantastic conversation. And his fiance comes up and says, "We need to go. We got to get to our next gate." And he says, "I'm hanging out with Drake." And so we talk, and then he moves on, and this woman from Mexico comes over and sits down next to me and says, I'm traveling back to Mexico to see my mother who's just been hospitalized. Could I just say hi to your dog? We had 10 different people come up to us while we were sitting there. The seat never got cold.
So how are we going to be like Drake is the question, right?
How do we create an environment where people are comfortable approaching us, where we can be curious about them and create a moment where we get along, where we're collaborative?
We have
And
something that we do is we have cars that say "You're amazing" on them. So we have like 8 of these cars, and like we also like whenever we meet somebody, anybody's trained in our organization, we say "You're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing." And it's so
nice.
funny. Like I'd say 1 or 2 out of 10 times I do that, they'll look at me like this and go, "Why do you say that?" Because they're like probably not trusting. And I go, "Hey, well,
Right.
are you a friend?" They go, "Yeah." I go, "Are you a son or a daughter?" If it's a girl, they go, "Yeah." I go, "Well, I think you're pretty amazing to them, right?" And
Yeah.
and then they smile and go, I go, "Well, I'm doing that because I want you to know your job's not what's most important. Who you are is most important. Who you are is amazing." And
Yeah.
that's what we use like for like that's kind of like our Drake effect. But I think people would trust you more because, and I know this is people are probably once because you are blind, right? Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Well, because they see the opportunity to be helpful to me, and it makes them feel good about themselves. And I'm willing to accept that, right? It doesn't diminish me. And I'm also able to be helpful to others. So I'm about trying to make the world a better place, to help people get along. And the reason that trust levels are so low right now is because people have a fundamental lack of awareness about what trust is and how it works. And we need to be more intentional than we've ever been. And so it doesn't take long for them to get the sense that I'm trying to be helpful. I'm trying to make the world a better place, and that I have a positive story about them. We
And
like people who like us.
trust is encouragement, wouldn't you say?
I think it's a huge part of it. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can't be an encourager if you're not a trustworthy person. It's very difficult to be to show unconditional encouragement and not to be
Yeah.
trustworthy. It's like null and void.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we can't find a positive story about somebody else, that says a lot more about us than it does about them.
I love that. I love that. So man, I want you to know that I'm thankful for you, and I'm thankful I didn't know that you were blind from the beginning of this episode, because in some ways would you say that there's like a false trust with that sometimes? That
Yeah. Yeah. People often forget because I pass well. But I'm legally blind, not completely blind.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm able to kind of manage and get around.
Yeah,
But
that's how you knew that guy was a black guy.
yeah, well, he blocked
I
my
was going to ask you. I was like, how'd you know the guy was a black guy?
Oh, he sat down right next to me. He was so close, right? And what a sweet man. And like, just we had such a mix of people, right? Come to hang with us. And I thought, man, if everyone experienced the world the way I do, wandering through it with Drake, we'd have such a positive story about everyone, right? Because
Yeah. Well, isn't that the goal? Isn't that the goal? You know, the goal is that somebody can hurt you and you can forgive. The goal
yeah,
is somebody can help you and you can be grateful.
yeah,
Somebody that you're not going to go, oh, they're just helping me because they want something. Or, oh, they hurt me because they're horrible and they're the worst person that ever lived. No, they hurt you probably because they've been hurt. Hurt people, healed people, help people. You know, it's
right.
just that simple.
Well, and one of the sayings I have is that sometimes a hard road's a good teacher.
Yep.
And so after we've been through struggles, after we've been through trauma, after we've been through hard times, we realize that sometimes when people do things that hurt us, it's not about us at all. Right? And we've experienced pain. We're comfortable with it. We know what it means. And you know, we can actually start to adopt the perspective of, I wonder what was going on for them. I wonder what struggles they're having, that they were able to cause that pain and not look back or not care.
So do you think, you know, a question I don't want to ask a guy like you because you're the trust expert. You know, do you think am I a trustworthy person by your experience today?
Brother, you come across as caring and compassionate. I absolutely.
Okay.
Um,
I hope so, because I want to build trust with you and with the whole world, Darryl, because I think a lot of people out there, because of their belief systems, aren't willing to put themselves out there to really encourage people that are different than them, to walk in their shoes, to be able to care for them, and to be able to be sensitive to their sufferings and want to be a part of their life. And Darryl, I trust you, and I'm thankful. And I hope people reach out to you because I'm sure this is what you do for your work, right?
it
You work
is.
with different organizations, you work with different companies to share on trust, and we'll have all your information below in the podcast. But what's your takeaway here today, Darryl?
If folks want to learn more, they can buy the book, Building Trust, Exceptional Leadership in an Uncertain World. I try to lay out everything in there. If they can't afford the book, they can go to my website, trustunlimited.com. There's articles in the blog section. I've showed up in a few different places to talk about trust and how it works, so they can find me on YouTube. If I can be helpful, that's my aspiration. So I hope that people reach out or look for me on LinkedIn, or I feel like I'm dropping grains of sand in the ocean, having this huge impact, but with a small number of people. I'm trying to get the signal through the noise. And so if people could come alongside me and pick up great big rocks, that'd be fantastic.
No, that's great. And I hope you can encourage Darryl, because what he's striving to do is to encourage others. And I can tell you that we've walked together today to give you just different elements on building trust, on how to build trust, on how trust does matter, and how it's difficult. But take a chance, be authentic, and maybe you'll have a relationship, a trustworthy relationship that you never imagined you could have. Be like Drake, be like his dog, all right? Show unconditional love, unconditional encouragement, build them up, and come back for more podcasts like these to be encouraged, to learn more about trust and all different kinds of virtues that can help you to get out there and make a difference. I can tell you, if you're a mother, if you're a father, if you're a leader out there, this podcast is for you, because it will help you to be able to help others encourage people. We learned about trust today, right, Darryl? But guess what? We got work to do. We got to go out and encourage some people. Let's do it, Darryl.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Encouragement Conquers All podcast with Justin Fatica. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this episode with someone who needs a little encouragement. For more uplifting content, follow us on our social media pages. See you in the next episode.